Let's start by changing that star icon based on whether this currently is a favorite or not. I want to have that filled star only if it is a favorite and an empty star if it's not. So in the end, in the meal detail screen, we need to swap that icon which we're rendering here based on the favorite status of this meal we loaded here. Now again, problem here is we can find out whether that meal is a favorite or not in a very easy way in the component function, but not really in the navigation options. So again, we'll need params to communicate between these two. But overall, that's not too difficult. What I want to do here is I want to get my favorite meals with the help of useSelector in the meal detail screen component function with the help of state and then state.meals.favorite meals. So I want to get all my favorite meals, and now I simply want to check if that meal is part of the favorite meals. And actually, we can therefore refine this and even name this current meal is favorite. And in the selector, not just return the favorite meals, but add a bit more logic in there and simply add a check where we call sum, which is also a built-in method, which returns true if the condition which we're about to specify is true for at least one item in that array. And there, I check for every meal that's in there if the meal ID is equal to the meal ID I retrieve here. And hence I have to swap lines. So here I get the meal ID of the meal we're loading on the detailed screen. And then I check my favorite meals if that meal ID is part of them, which would mean that this meal is part of our favorites. So with that, we have this current meal is favorite information. Now we need to pass it to the navigation options. And again, we can do this with useEffect, maybe down there. Just as before, provide a function here and an array of dependencies. In the function here, I'll set props, navigation, set params to merge more data into my params. And that is maybe the isFav param, name is up to you, which holds the current meal is favorite value, so that value which we just derived. And now a dependency of that function, of that useEffect call, is of course current meal is favorite. When that changes, I want to forward the new information to the params and therefore to the header. Otherwise, this effect shouldn't rerun. So now back in the navigation options, we can retrieve that information here. Is favorite can be retrieved from navigation, data.navigation with the help of getParam. And there I named this isFav. Here it is. So that's the name by which we can retrieve it. Now we have the isFavorite information in the header, and we can now use this to render a different icon here. So instead of always rendering iOS star, I'll have a dynamic expression here, and I'll check if isFavorite is true. If it is, then I want to use iOS star, which is this filled star. If it's not, I'll render iOS star outline. That will be an empty star. With that, we hopefully have a setup that works as expected. If I go to the spaghetti, now this is an empty star. If I click this, it's a filled star, and it's part of the favorites. If I then go to the detail screen here, you see, takes a bit until the star is filled out here as well. We'll have to fix this. If I now click it here and we go back to meals, there it all's updated. And that's the magic of Redux. It updates one part of the application if something related changes in another part. That's exactly how it should behave here. So that generally works. The only thing that wasn't too beautiful is that this star here initially is empty and only gets filled out after this is loaded. So we can fix that, but other than that, this is working as it should. Now to fix this initially empty star, again, we can use a workaround I explained earlier. For that initial header data, we don't want to wait for the first render to finish. Instead, we should pass this initial data into this component when we navigate to it. Hence, it's time for the meal list again, where we have this navigation action, to also forward this isFav key already. So this key which I tried to extract here in the meal detail screen, down there, getParam isFav. I want to pass the current value when we load this component, when we load this screen here from inside the meal list, which is the component which triggers that navigation to meal detail. Of course, there, item data item is a single meal, but that doesn't hold information about whether that's part of our favorites or not. But of course, we can find out whether that's the case or not. In the meal list, we can also tap into the Redux store, not just from the screen components. So here I can also use selector from React Redux like this. And then in my component here, I can get my favorite meals with the help of use selector, where I get my state and then return state.meals.favorite meals to get all my favorite meals. And now when we render a single meal item, we can use that to find out whether that meal item is part of our favorites. By the way, you can't use selector in there. That would not be a valid usage because you must use React hooks only on the root level of your component function, not in nested functions or nested if blocks or anything like that. So using use selector in here is not allowed. But we can use our favorite meals in there, of course. And therefore here we can find out whether this is a favorite by simply checking the favorite meals and looking for the meal where its ID matches the item data.item.id, so the ID of the meal we're currently rendering. Therefore, is favorite will hold the item we found there. Alternatively, we use sum here, which is a built-in JavaScript method that will return true if any item in favorite meals matches this condition. So if isFavorite is true, we know this item is a favorite, and therefore we can use isFavorite as a value for isFav, which we pass as an initial param to the meal detail screen. And now this flickering star, which initially is empty, should be gone. Now if I mark this as a favorite here, and I'll leave this and I come back, it's filled out right from the start. Also on the favorite screen, of course. So that's that. This is how we can work with favorites. Let's now make sure we show some dummy text here on the favorite screen in case we got no data to display otherwise. And thereafter, let's take care about our filters.